Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney just brought the House down on Canada Day with perhaps his most powerful speech yet, drawing a contrast between Canada and the United States. This following an announcement by the Trump regime that they would not be renewing CUSMA, the Canadian-US-Mexico agreement that Donald Trump himself touted as negotiating during his first term. Instead, the Trump regime said that they would just do annual renewals or annual reviews of CUSMA in order to try to torment and harass Canada and Mexico and continue to saber rattle. Well, Canada ain't taking it. And I'm going to show you this powerful speech that Prime Minister Carney just gave. Here he talks about how Canada is worth fighting for. And no matter how much the Trump regime tries to bully Canada, Canada's best days are yet to come. And I want you to take a look at this audience right here so you can see what a real crowd looks like in contrast to whatever the heck this America 250 fair is that Donald Trump is throwing. So as Donald Trump is out there panicking right now about his crowd sizes and what it's going to look like on July 4th. And while Donald Trump is encouraging people to get very sick during the heat waves that are expected on July 4th, Trump says, I'm going to make people wait for me until 11 p.m. at night for the fireworks in 107-degree weather. I'll show you in a moment too. Prime Minister Carney took a pause during his powerful speech saying, all right.
You think a lot of parents would, encourage their children's kind of high aspirations.
Yes.
But like you told your mom,
when I was a kid, before I wanted to be a comedian, my dream was to be the president of the United States. It's the only real job I ever wanted, okay? Only time I wanted an office. I wanted to be the president of the United States. And I told my mother, and she's like, "Plan! We got Elon. They're gonna put him in a rocket ship. We call it Space Mex." Oh, yeah. J-Lo's gonna marry Ben again just so she can stay in the country.
Here is a fact that Donald Trump does not want you to think about, because it is the single most revealing truth about who he actually is. The most powerful man on the planet, the man with the nuclear codes, the man commanding a naval blockade in the Persian Gulf, the man whose Justice Department is indicting his enemies and whose FCC is threatening television licenses, is terrified of comedians, not politically inconvenienced, not mildly annoyed, terrified. And no comedian on earth has gotten under his skin with more precision, more brutality, and more lasting damage than Chris Rock. Because when Chris Rock takes the stage on live television and turns his attention to Donald Trump, something happens that Trump cannot control, cannot sue, cannot sanction, and cannot indict. The whole country laughs at him, not with him. At him. And for a man whose entire psychological architecture is built on the desperate need to be feared and admired, being laughed at on live national television is a wound that never heals. Welcome to USA Press. Tonight we are going into the full history of Chris Rock versus Donald Trump. Every live TV moment, every surgical strike, every joke that landed like a missile.
Hydration break. How's everyone doing? Is everyone okay? Prime Minister Carney has become the new leader of the free world. Let's take a look at what Prime Minister Carney said here about the conviction that Canada is worth fighting for. Shout out to all the Maple Midas out there. Let's play it.
My friends, this work is born from the conviction that Canada is worth fighting for. That Canada belongs to all Canadians, that Canada's best days are yet to come. These convictions were forged across generations and they're being renewed by this generation. Courage, connections, conviction, Canada, our Canada, Canada true, Canada strong, Canada free. Un Canada pour tous.
Canada for all.
Now.
Always.
Then Prime Minister Carney talks about how Canada is a country of extraordinary diversity, and that should be celebrated in Canada, unlike in the fascist United States, where the Trump regime and people like Pete Hegseth attack diversity every day. Let's play this clip.
Nous sommes un pays d'une extraordinaire diversité.
We are a country of extraordinary diversity, a people of many backgrounds, languages, and ways of seeing the world. The foundational concept of Canada is simple. Unity does not mean or require uniformity. Our nation was forged through accommodation, not assimilation, and through partnership, not domination. It is neither a myth nor a miracle. Rather, it is a series of choices, imperfect though they may be, made generation after generation. And these choices matter more than ever in a world which too often divides us. In a world where traditional alliances are crumbling, Canada has chosen to reach out and build new partnerships.
We offer partnership in a divided world, partnership in security, partnership in trade, partnership in culture.
Prime Minister Carney then looks out at the crowd and says, I just want to let you know how happy I am giving this speech and seeing the diversity in the crowd. Could you ever mention Donald Trump or imagine Donald Trump ever saying anything like that? Trump said during his speech today that he was thinking about threesomes with his children. Did you hear Donald Trump say that? Oh yeah, and Donald Trump said what made him happy was getting so rich during his first year in the office, where he made over $2.4 billion trading crypto and stocks with all the insider information that he has. Let's play Prime Minister Carney right here. Let's play this clip.
My fellow Canadians, what a view from up here. I am looking out. I am looking out at a diverse, happy crowd of fellow Canadians, and I tell you, this fills me with immense pride. You get real perspective.
The cast of The Apprentice is running the world. Trump, the daughter, Omarosa, they run the world, man. Yo, man, this.
And we are going to connect it to the war on comedy that this administration is waging right now, this very week, through the FCC and the White House press office and the president's own unhinged social media account. Because if you understand why Trump goes nuts over comedians, you understand everything about him. Stay with us. This is going to be a ride. Before we get to the demolitions themselves, you need to understand the history between these two men, because this is not a rivalry that started with a monologue. This goes back decades to the same city, in the same era, when both of them were building their names in New York. In the late 1980s, while Chris Rock was grinding through the comedy clubs of Manhattan, Catch a Rising Star, the comic strip, the brutal open mic circuit where a black kid from Bed-Stuy had to be twice as funny to get half the stage time, Donald Trump was across town plastering his name in gold letters on everything he could borrow money to buy. They were both creatures of the New York tabloids, The Post and the Daily News, that carried Trump's manufactured Playboy exploits on page 6, were the same papers reviewing Rock's rise from Eddie Murphy's protege to SNL cast member to the most important stand-up comedian of his generation. And here is the thing every serious Trump watcher understands. Trump was always watching that world, always keeping score, always desperate for the approval of the entertainers and the artists and the genuinely talented people who treated him as exactly what he was. A tabloid character, a punchline with a helicopter. Rock came up in an industry that Trump could never buy his way into. You cannot purchase funny. You cannot inherit timing from your father along with the real estate empire. Comedy is the one arena where Fred Trump's money was worthless, and Donald Trump has spent his entire life orbiting it, cameoing in movies, hosting SNL twice, showing up at comedy roasts, begging to be in on the joke, while never once being genuinely funny himself. The 2011 Comedy Central roast of Donald Trump is a perfect artifact of this dynamic. Trump sat there and endured jokes about his hair, his marriages, his bankruptcies. But he set one topic off limits, one single subject the comedians were forbidden to touch. Not his family.
Of our great country from up here.
Prime Minister Carney also said, the true measure, this is so powerful right here, the true measure of what we build is not whether we're remembered. He says it's whether those that follow stand on a higher platform. And just think about that in contrast to Donald Trump wanting to put his name and face everywhere, Trump defacing monuments so that it could have his face on it, right? The park pass for our national parks has Trump's face on it. New passports have Trump's face on it. He wants to put his face on a $250 bill. It's embarrassing. Let me show you what Carney had to say about the true measure of success. Let's play it.
When I spoke to Colonel Hansen just after his recent road trip, he reminded me of something that his mission commander, Reed Wiseman, had said just before they set out. And the commander said that he hoped one day that their mission would be forgotten, because that would mean that Artemis II was a success. Successful because others would have gone further, because the torch would have been passed and carried forward. You know, it's the right perspective for how we build an even better country, because the true measure of what we build is not whether we're remembered. It's whether those that follow can stand on a higher platform and reach higher than we ever could. That's what we're doing, Canada.
Prime Minister Carney says right now, Canadians are aiming high. We're aiming to the moon, and we're aiming for the World Cup victory. Here, play this clip right here.
And right now, Canadians are aiming high. We're aiming for the moon as well as the World Cup. That's right.
More from Prime Minister Carney talking about how 159 years ago, Canada was born. It wasn't perfect, but it offered a foundation, a starting point. Let's play it.
Yes, 159 ans, le Canada
159 years ago, Canada was born. It wasn't perfect, but it offered a foundation, a starting point, born on a profound conviction that we can always be better.
Every generation of Canadians inherits something that was built by the generations before. A railway, a seaway, a charter of rights, a path towards reconciliation, a country that's more prosperous, more just, more inclusive than the one they inherited from their parents. None of us builds on empty ground. We build on those platforms raised by those who came before us. And our job, our duty even, is to raise it higher still for those who come after. C'est cela, bâtir véritablement.
And that is what truly building a country is all about. Never thinking that the work is done, because a country is always evolving. It's about seeking to make it better. And that is the choice that every generation is confronted with. And it's the choice offered to us today.
Trump is not playing, man. That's right. This time is totally different. He's working with the #1 African American in the world, the richest African American in the world, Elon Musk. That's right, he is African American. Elon got more kids than the...
Not his failures. The forbidden topic was any suggestion that he was not as rich as he claimed. That tells you everything. The man could tolerate being called ugly, ridiculous, even a failure. But the mythology of his wealth, the core fiction of his identity, had to be protected by contract. Comedians have known where Trump's soft tissue is for 40 years. And Chris Rock, who came up watching this man perform wealth the way a comic performs a bit, has never once been fooled. Let us start with the most recent full-scale demolition, because it deserves to be studied line by line. December 2024, Saturday Night Live. Studio 8H at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. Chris Rock, hosting for the 4th time, walks out for his opening monologue just weeks after Donald Trump has won the presidency for the 2nd time. The country is still processing. Half of America is in despair, the other half is celebrating, and everyone is waiting to see what one of the sharpest comedic minds of his generation is going to say about it. And Chris Rock, being Chris Rock, does not do what anyone expects. He does not deliver comforting liberal talking points. He does not soften anything. He walks straight into the fire and starts swinging in every direction. And the swings aimed at Trump are the ones that leave marks. He starts by addressing the hand-wringing about Trump's return. People keep saying Trump will be so undignified as president, Rock says, and then he detonates the premise. Dude, it's the United States. Come on, man. This is not the most dignified job in the world. We've had presidents show up to the inauguration with pregnant slaves, okay? He pauses. The audience is already gasping. And then the twist of the knife. And I'm just talking about Bill Clinton. The room explodes. But Rock is not done. He goes deeper into the historical vein. And this is where the genius lives. Because what he says next is one of the most devastating pieces of political comedy delivered on American television in years. He says, I mean, you know what country we live in. You know the history of this country. You know how many rapists are in my wallet right now? A cup of coffee in America costs 7 rapists. And then the payoff, aimed directly at the incoming president. Trump's gonna get it down to 3. Think about what that joke is actually doing. In 15 seconds, Chris Rock connected the legal history of the man about to re-enter the White House. A man found liable by a jury for sexual abuse in the E. Jean Carroll case, a man with decades of documented allegations. To the slave-owning founders whose faces are printed on American currency. He told the country, you are not shocked by this man because you know this country. You have always known this country. The joke is not a defense of Trump. It is an indictment of the entire mythology that lets people pretend Trump is an aberration. It is the kind of joke that only Chris Rock can deliver because it wounds everyone in the room at the same time. And the deepest wound lands on the man in Mar-a-Lago watching a comedy show tell 60 million people that his name belongs in a sentence with the word rapists and a punchline about American currency. And then Rock turned to the deportation plans. He warned the audience, Trump is not playing, man. This time it's totally different.
Je suis si
That's why
fier de voir autant
I am
de
so
Canadiens
proud to
et
see
Canadiennes
so many
choisir de
Canadians
poursuivre l'œuvre de
continuing
celles et ceux qui
the work
les
of
ont
those who
précédés,
came before
d'agir
them
selon leurs
act
convictions
on
et de
their
bâtir un
convictions.
Canada fort.
and build Canada
Building
strong.
Then Prime Minister Carney says, all right, we're going to take a hydration break right now. Let's take a hydration break, everybody. Watch this for yourself. Let's play it.
Speaking of which, before I introduce Jeremy finally, public service announcement, it is time for a hydration break. It's hot. If you're watching at home, it is hot here.
Now, let me just show you the Maple MAGA, what they've been saying in response to that. So you can see like who is their MAGA in Canada. Jamil Javani, very close to J.D. Vance. Pierre Poilievre's right hand, member of parliament, right-wing Maple MAGA guy. And he's like, and why was Carney out there in the Pride Parade taking photos with half-naked men? He should not be, just the divisive hatred. MAGA in Canada. Watch Giovanni for yourself. Play this clip.
Yesterday, I heard from many Canadians who had a lot of thoughts and opinions concerning my comments about Mark Carney and the Pride Parade. So let me be very clear. I think it's shameful that we have a prime minister shaking hands with half-naked dudes wearing perverted costumes at a parade. I also think it's especially shameful that there were children present during that spectacle. Now, we should have a prime minister that is trying to solve our country's problems. We should have serious leadership in this country that wants to address the affordability crisis, serious leadership that wants to create economic opportunity, serious leadership that wants to address the trade issues with the United States, which currently puts hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk. But instead of any of that, we have a prime minister who would rather be spending his time shaking hands with half-naked dudes at a parade. That's not the Canada that I grew up in. I think our country deserves better, and I hope you agree with me.
And this is what was bugging Giovanni, apparently, that Prime Minister Carney was out there with the people celebrating Pride. Like, this is what these Maple MAGA, just like the MAGA here, get angry about. Let's play this clip right here. And then Prime Minister Carney earlier gave this address to the public saying that today we're faced with these types of decisions that come once in every generation. Let me play it.
Unlike many countries, we can control our future.
And then he introduced the partnership that was, at the time, the most powerful alliance in American politics. He's working with the #1 African American in the world, the richest African American in the world, Elon Musk. The crowd groaned. The delicious, uncomfortable groan of an audience that knows it is hearing something it will be quoting for weeks. Rock leaned in. That's right, he is African American. Elon got more kids than the Cleveland Browns. Nobody knows how to get rid of people like a South African. A joke about apartheid, about Musk's origins in a white supremacist state, about the racial architecture of the mass deportation agenda. Delivered as a punchline so smooth the audience was laughing before the full weight of it landed. He capped it with the image that trended for days. Trump and Musk putting immigrants in a rocket ship. Call it Space Mechs. Now, here is where I put on my full politics nerd hat, because the aftermath of that monologue tells you everything about the Trump psychology that I have been tracking for years. Trump did not respond directly to Chris Rock. And if you know Trump, if you have studied every feud, every 2 a.m. social media eruption, every enemy list he has ever assembled, you know that his silence about specific people is never neutral. Trump has a very particular pattern with black entertainers who mock him. He raged at Snoop Dogg for years. He attacked LeBron James's intelligence on Twitter. He went after Don Lemon, Joy Reid, Kamala Harris with the same recycled insults. But Chris Rock occupies a strange space in Trump's psychology, and here is why. Trump spent decades desperate for the approval of exactly the kind of New York celebrity culture that Chris Rock embodies. Rock came up through the New York comedy scene in the 1980s and 90s. The same city, the same era, the same tabloids where Trump was building his myth. Trump watched Chris Rock become the most respected stand-up comedian in America, while Trump himself remained a punchline in that world. The gaudy rich guy from Queens that Manhattan society never fully accepted. When Chris Rock mocks Trump, it is not just a comedian mocking a politician. It is the culture that Trump has spent his entire life trying to impress, telling him, once again, in front of everyone, you were always the joke. And Rock has been telling him that on live television for years. Let's go to October 2020. Trump is in Walter Reed Hospital with COVID-19. The country does not know how sick he is. SNL returns from its pandemic hiatus for its season premiere, and Chris Rock is the host. He walks out, addresses what he calls the elephant in the room, and delivers a line of such perfect, brutal economy that it instantly entered the Political Comedy Hall of Fame.
But that will require doing things differently, moving faster, building bigger, and working together. And nowhere is that more the case than energy. Today, we're faced with the types of decisions that come once every few generations, but will determine our future for decades. Our independence, sustainability, and prosperity will depend crucially on our ability to supply and control our energy.
Now, I want to just contrast Carney's speech to Trump. You saw Carney's speech. Here was Donald Trump saying that he wants people out there in 107 degrees weather so that they can get sick, and that'll show their endurance. Here, play this clip.
And this week, we look back on 250 years of glorious freedom, and we took so much time and so much effort. And by the way, on July 4th, it's going to be approximately 107 degrees out. And I'm going to go and I'm going to make a really long speech just to show that I can do anything. It's going to be 107.
Or Trump talking about a threesome with his children. You can play this clip right here.
Now, as I see my two beautiful sons sitting there, I think I'm going to give one to myself, one to them, and we'll have a threesome, okay? I'll pick out one of the two. I'll give them the Congressional Medal of Honor for something, for their genius at hunting. And I'll get one for taking on Russia or something. And we'll have a third pair. No, I'm only kidding.
And then finally, I'll show you Melanie Joly in Canada. And she finds out, like live, that the Trump regime is pulling out of CUSMA. And I just want you to watch her reaction as well. Let's play it.
Your reaction to Reuters reporting that the U.S. is going to be pulling out of CUSMA, and what would this mean for Canadian industry?
Well, I just learned the news here 30 seconds ago. Of course, I'll have the chance to talk with the Prime Minister and the Minister in charge of U.S.-Canada trade. And when we'll have more to say, we'll have more to say. These are information through a media source. And of course, we'll be waiting for any official conversation coming out from the White House. But I think fundamentally, what Canadians need to know is that we've been ready for every single scenario. We've been working at this. Some industries have been affected by the trade war for the past year and have shown great resiliency. And we've been working with business leaders, unions, employees themselves. And so we have a mandate from the Canadian public to build Canada strong, to make sure that we can create jobs, notwithstanding what's going south of the border. And that is exactly why we're here today. We're announcing 500 new jobs, and we know we can grow this economy and we can diversify our markets around the world to make sure that we reduce our dependency on the US market.
There you
President Trump's in the hospital from COVID, and I just want to say, my heart goes out to COVID. The President of the United States is in a hospital bed, and the biggest comedy stage in America just expressed sympathy for the virus. That is not a joke, Trump forgets. Men like Trump keep ledgers. Every slight is recorded. Every laugh at his expense is a debt to be collected. And in that same monologue, Rock delivered a critique that stung in a completely different way. He asked why Democrats kept losing to this man. The Democrats just keep putting up 75-year-old people to run against Trump. One thing we can say about Trump, he's got the most energy of any 75-year-old person on the face of the earth. Even Mick Jagger's like, slow down, Donald. Rock has never been a partisan hack, and that is precisely what makes him so dangerous to Trump. He cannot be dismissed as a Democrat operative. When he skewers Biden's age, when he mocks Democratic incompetence, he builds the credibility that makes his Trump material land like artillery. Then there is March 2023, the Mark Twain Prize ceremony for Adam Sandler at the Kennedy Center, broadcast for the nation. This was the height of the will they won't they drama over Trump's first indictment in the Stormy Daniels hush money case, and every political analyst in America was debating what an arrest would mean. Chris Rock got up in front of that Kennedy Center audience and cut through months of cable news punditry with one line. Are you really going to arrest Trump? That's like arresting Tupac. He's just going to sell more records. And then the kicker, indicting him is only going to make him more popular. Here is the thing that should genuinely unsettle you. Chris Rock was right. He was more right than almost every professional political analyst in the country. Trump was indicted 4 times, convicted on 34 felony counts, and won the presidency anyway, with his mugshot printed on t-shirts that funded his campaign. Chris Rock called the entire arc of the 2024 election in one joke at an awards ceremony, 2 years before it happened. That is not just comedy. That is political analysis operating at a level that embarrassed an entire industry of pundits. And for Trump, who obsessively consumes every word said about him, who, according to former aides, has always monitored late-night monologues the way other presidents monitored intelligence briefings. Hearing Chris Rock compare him to Tupac was the strangest kind of wound, an insult wrapped inside an accurate prophecy of his own dark triumph. And we cannot talk about Chris Rock's untouchability without talking about March 2023 and selective outrage. The night Chris Rock made television history and demonstrated, in real time, exactly the kind of power that Donald Trump cannot comprehend and cannot compete with. Netflix had never aired a live event in its history.
Speaker of the House Mike Johnson sending his House colleagues home early for the July 4th recess after Republican hardliners blocked floor activity. What is the problem with the Senate, and why are they so unwilling or unable to extend and execute President Trump's agenda?
Look, you heard J.D. Vance say it best. It is a defeatist perspective to say, well, the votes aren't there, so we're not going to try. But it's equally the fault of the House. And I actually just messaged the Speaker and I said, look, we can't allow them to put a Senate bill on the floor that they're going to use in their re-elections without attaching the Save America Act to it. And I know that the president has been very vocal about this. And I do hope that if it does pass, we're going to try to stop it. We're going to try to attach the Save America to it, but he should actually veto it.
Aga Mike's speakership has run into the same problem that keeps destroying the Republican Party. Donald Trump's demands are easy to make in front of the camera to sound big and bold, but almost impossible to govern around, because Johnson tried to move the National Defense Authorization Act, the annual defense policy bill that Congress normally treats as must-pass legislation, tried to attach Trump's Save America Act to it, and the whole thing just collapsed.
So what happened yesterday? What can you tell us about that failed rule vote and the early departure?
Well, Maria, Anna Paulina Luna and a number of my colleagues tanked the rule in large measure because, as she said, she wants to attach the Save America Act to every piece of legislation that comes through the House floor. And while I understand the sentiment and certainly support voter ID, support proof of citizenship, the fact is that we have passed it 3 times through the House. We are not the issue. The Senate is, and that really boils down to the Senate rules and the filibuster. And the Democrats are never going to give the votes, which means the only vehicle by which you can actually pass it through the Senate with the filibuster intact is reconciliation. And so I think it's, frankly, self-defeating.
The vote earlier yesterday was supposed to advance the National Defense Authorization Act. This is the annual Pentagon policy package. Historically, it passes with broad bipartisan support, but Johnson and Republican leadership tried to jam Trump's Save America Act into the process. The Save America Act is Trump's election bill that would impose new voting restrictions, including proof of citizenship requirements and other changes that Democrats and voting rights advocates warn could block eligible voters.
This fight over the Save America Act, the president wants to rein in mail-in voting. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, actually, a big decision came out today. In fact, Shannon, a few hours ago, a federal judge blocked the president's executive order on that, declaring it unconstitutional. Yesterday, we saw the U.S. Postmaster General told the Senate he planned to hold back those absentee ballots from states that refused to comply and provide voter rolls or folks that were eligible to receive those absentee ballots. The administration is arguing that this would have curbed voter fraud ahead of the midterms. Democrats said that it was totally unacceptable. We did try to get a response from a White House official today. Haven't heard anything on this just yet.
And already suffered a major issue in federal court with an Obama-era judge blocking it.
In Boston, a federal judge today halted President Trump's executive order, which aimed to regulate mail-in voting and create a federal voter list. In her ruling, Judge Indira Telwani sided with nearly 24 states in finding that, quote,
I mean, we got Luigi. We got Luigi, and that's good. I really feel sorry for the family. I mean, everybody's fixated on how good looking this guy looks. If he looked like Jonah Hill, no one would care. They'd already given him a chair already. Be dead, okay?
Never. The biggest streaming platform on the planet, with hundreds of millions of subscribers worldwide, chose one performer to be the first human being to broadcast live on its service. And that performer was Chris Rock. Think about the level of institutional trust that represents. A global corporation bet its first ever live broadcast on one man with a microphone, no script approval, no delay, no safety net. And Rock delivered a special that dominated the global conversation for weeks, primarily for his long-awaited response to the Will Smith slap. But woven throughout, it was the same fearless political material he has always done. The special made him bigger than he had ever been. His tour sold out worldwide. And here is the nerd-level connection that I need you to see. This is the exact opposite of the Trump model of power. Trump's power requires institutions to bend, networks to settle lawsuits, the FCC to threaten licenses, publishers to be sued into silence. Rock's power is that institutions bend toward him voluntarily because he delivers something they cannot manufacture: genuine cultural authority. Netflix gave Chris Rock the keys to a first-in-history broadcast because they trusted him completely. Meanwhile, the White House Correspondents Association is hiring mentalists because the President of the United States cannot be trusted to sit through a comedy set. One of these men has real power. It is not the one with the nuclear codes. Now let me open the enemies file, because as your resident Trump obsessive, I keep the full ledger, and the list of comedians this man has publicly raged at is longer than most people remember. And the pattern within it is devastating. Rosie O'Donnell. The original, the first comedian blood feud, going back to 2006, so deep in Trump's psyche that he brought her up unprompted at a presidential debate in 2015. And so enduring that, in his second term, he has publicly mused about revoking her citizenship after she moved to Ireland. A president of the United States discussing stripping citizenship from a comedian. Kathy Griffin, prosecuted in all but name after the severed head photo, placed on the no-fly list, investigated by the Secret Service, her career burned to the ground. The clearest first-term preview of what he would later industrialize. Jon Stewart, who Trump attacked on Twitter years ago with a sneering reference to his birth name. A dog whistle so unsubtle that even his defenders winced. Stephen Colbert, whose cancellation at CBS last year came while the network's parent company needed federal merger approval, a coincidence that nobody in the industry believes was a coincidence.
The Constitution does not grant the president any specific powers over elections. her decision would apply to the November midterms, though the White House plans to appeal.
His plan was supposed to solve an internal Republican fight, but instead it just further cemented the divide. Rule failed 198 to 224. And once again, the Republican Party looked far from a governing party with a majority rule. Countless Republicans joined Democrats to oppose a rule, which sends a brutal message, right? This was not Democrats blocking Mike Johnson. This was Mike Johnson failing to control Republicans. And that's worse for him, right? Because he can't blame Democrats for opposing Trump's voting bill. All it does is show that in his efforts to satisfy Trump to no end by attaching the Save America Act to the defense bill, he failed to govern again. I mean, how many times has this happened under his leadership? And the deeper problem is that Trump's Save America Act is politically toxic and it's procedurally difficult. Despite Trump's wishes, the Senate does not appear to have the votes to pass it as a standalone measure. That's why Republicans keep trying to find ways to attach it to other bills. The Homeland Security bill with the defense bill. The pattern's clear. Republicans keep trying to staple it to must-pass legislation, but each time they do, they create more chaos. The bill that is supposedly about election integrity is now repeatedly threatening the basic function of Congress. Trump wants Republicans to prioritize his voting bill because his entire political identity, hell, his identity is built around the lie that elections are stolen unless he wins them.
You ever hear the fake news? They say that's an 80-20 issue. No, it's not. It's 99-1. You know, I've been doing politics now for 10 years. Not that long, considering I've won 3 elections, so it does. But we did great in the second one. It was a rigged deal.
And this is what Trump does to Republican governance, right? He takes normal legislative work and he turns it into a loyalty test. He takes a defense bill and makes it about his election obsession. He takes a House Speaker and makes him choose between institutional function and MAGA appeasement. And Mike Johnson just keeps choosing MAGA, which results in failure after failure when it comes to the simple act of governing in a majority. The whole thing rests on Trump's obsession with voter fraud, right? Since losing the 2020 election, something in him, it's just broken. Still to this day, he peddles the lies, and his allies have kept inflating claims about non-citizen voting and mail ballot fraud. But when they're asked to provide substantive evidence, they either...
Man, they got Elon. They're going to put him in a rocket ship. We call it Space Mex. Oh, yeah. J-Lo's going to marry Ben again just so she can stay in the country.
Seth Meyers, who Trump still attacks by name on Truth Social to this day over that 2011 dinner. Jimmy Kimmel, twice now. Suspended once in September over the Charlie Kirk remarks, and this very week facing the full weight of the federal licensing apparatus over a single joke about Melania, and Saturday Night Live as an institution. Decades of rage, from demanding equal time in 2016, to calling for its cancellation, to openly fantasizing about FCC retribution in 2019 tweets that legal scholars dismissed as impossible, right up until his second-term FCC made the impossible operational. Look at that ledger as one document, and the pattern is unmistakable. The fury is constant, the targets are always the ones who made rooms laugh at him, and the weapons have escalated from tweets to task forces. The only names missing from the retaliation list are the ones too big, too respected, and too dangerous to attack. Chris Rock sits at the top of that untouchable list. Dave Chappelle sits beside him. Trump has never gone after either of them by name, and I am telling you, as someone who has read every Truth Social post this man has ever published, that silence is not an accident. That silence is fear. If you're enjoying this deep dive, do me a favor right now. Smash that like button and subscribe to USA Press, because this is what we do here. The full history, the full context, the receipts, every single day. Share this video with somebody who thinks they know everything about Trump and comedy, because I promise you, we are just getting started. Now let us talk about why the title of tonight's report is not an exaggeration. Why Trump Goes Nuts is simply an accurate description of this president's documented, decades-long pattern of losing his mind over comedians on live television. Because the Chris Rock story is one chapter in a much larger book, and the current chapter is being written right now, this very week, in federal regulatory filings. Donald Trump's war with Saturday Night Live is one of the longest-running feuds in American entertainment. It goes back years, and I have tracked every escalation. In 2018 and 2019, during his first term, Trump repeatedly attacked SNL on Twitter, calling the show not funny, a one-sided Democrat spin machine, and
run away from the interview, or they just shut down entirely.
I think they're really right. That sounds like a period. All right, so can we also now stop pretending that the elections are not secure?
We can stop when they become secure. That's when we can stop doing it.
Where's your evidence that they are not secure?
I think, first of all, the fact that we do not have to show ID is a disgrace. Number two, I will find you videos, including 2024 in Connecticut, when you have on a security camera one person dumping in mail-in ballots.
I'm not gonna watch it. I'm not gonna watch your YouTube video.
Of course you don't want to watch it because it goes against your agenda. But if you opened your eyes and saw something that goes against what you believe, you'll see that it is not secure.
But hold on, Emily. Don't tell me to open my eyes.
What about a better argument than, oh, it doesn't happen.
Hold on, Emily.
Hold on,
Charles. Let me just let Emily finish what she was claiming, because she said, you said that there was a video in Connecticut. What's the point of the video?
My point is that mail-in ballots are not secure because they are mishandled.
Don't try to get off of it now.
Hold on. What's the point of the video in Connecticut that you're talking about? What happened in Connecticut?
One person dumped multiple mail-in ballots.
And then what happened? You said it was on video. So was that person charged?
I don't know. I have to
You
follow
don't know? You're telling me that there's massive fraud and it's caught on video, and you can't tell me whether it was real or not?
We can look into
whether
it.
the person was charged or not?
I really hope he was charged. But how many
here's the
instances
thing.
were not caught on camera?
But hold on.
I didn't have cameras.
Hold on, Emily.
Did I have cameras on my mailing ballot? No.
I'm just saying that you're basically.
It is absolutely a conspiracy.
It is a letter. It can be
Listen, I'm just saying, if you have video evidence,
that answer is a joke.
How about you defend the fact that we don't have to show voter ID?
Hold on a
You
second.
defend that too?
First of all, that is a ridiculous thing. So, do you believe that actually? In 50 states, that nobody has to show any ID.
I didn't say nobody. Everyone should be required.
I want to know, what are you saying? In which states can you vote and no one knows who you are? You have to show where you live, nothing. So which states are those?
How many New Yorkers said?
I didn't know the answer because you didn't know it.
How many? Should I give you a list of names? Let me post on Instagram. Everyone who didn't show ID in the New York election, come forward. People will come forward.
Here's the thing.
It's a joke.
You're a joke because you didn't answer that question. You tried to go around the corner.
Okay, hold on. Go ahead, Ashley.
And the timing of all this just makes it even worse, right? Republicans, they're heading into a politically dangerous midterm election environment. Trump is unpopular. The economy is in a terrible state. The Iran deal is being attacked from both sides of the political spectrum, and courts are blocking main parts of Trump's election agenda, from mail-in ballots and, of course, the recent Supreme Court ruling on birthright citizenship.
Oh dear, what did they rule?
Here we go.
This is the part people forget. He publicly mused about whether the show should face official consequences. He tweeted about looking into it. He invoked the FCC. He asked why networks were allowed to broadcast what he called Republican hit jobs, and floated the idea that this should be tested in courts. At the time, legal experts laughed. The FCC does not regulate comedy. The First Amendment protects satire. A president cannot punish a television network for mocking him. It cannot happen here, they said. And now look around. It is happening here. This exact week, the Federal Communications Commission, run by Trump's hand-picked chairman Brendan Carr, ordered Disney's 8 ABC-owned television stations to file license renewals years ahead of schedule, in what everyone from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression to the Knight First Amendment Institute has described as naked retaliation for Jimmy Kimmel's jokes about the first family. The FCC claims it's about Disney's diversity policies. Nobody believes that. Fire's chief counsel called the justification a fig leaf and said the campaign violates the First Amendment, pure and simple. The First Lady of the United States personally demanded a comedian be fired from his job. The White House communications director called for him to be shunned. The president posted that a late-night host's joke was a call to violence. Everything Trump fantasized about doing to SNL in 2019, every threat that legal experts dismissed as impossible bluster, is now operational federal policy in 2026. The fantasy became the playbook, and that is why the Chris Rock history matters so much right now. Because Rock represents the category of person Trump has never been able to defeat, and the machinery being aimed at Kimmel today is the machinery Trump always wished he could aim at every comedian who ever made a room laugh at him. And here is the twist in the SNL saga that makes the whole feud even more pathological. Trump hosted the show twice. Once in 2004, at the height of The Apprentice, and again in November 2015, in the middle of his first presidential campaign. An episode that triggered protests outside 30 Rock, demands from Latino advocacy groups that NBC cancel the booking, and an internal cast revolt that has been reported on for years. Trump wanted that stage desperately. He wanted to be embraced by the institution, to be in on the joke, to stand in Studio 8H where Chris Rock had been a cast member and prove that he belonged there too. The ratings were big and the reviews were brutal. Critics called it one of the weakest episodes in the show's history because Trump cannot do the one thing hosting requires. He cannot laugh at himself convincingly. Every self-deprecating line he delivered landed with the hollow thud of a man reading words he did not believe. And the moment the institution turned on him,
what's your reaction to that?
Well,
this is real time.
I need to read the opinion, okay? But obviously you could say that's a textualist, originalist view. However, I do think that this has been grossly abused in recent years, okay? And that is the case that was being made by the plaintiffs in the case, and we're very sympathetic to that because it is a serious problem. We have it's become a birthing tourism, they call it, a trend where people will just come and you just come onto the soil and have your child, and then they're able to avail themselves of the welfare state and everything else. It's been abused. It's one of those things that was intended to serve a noble and important purpose and has been thwarted and overused and abused. And so I'm sure that we'll continue to look at that. I mean, I'm sure the conclusion from this opinion is going to be that you got to amend the Constitution to fix that. As we all know, it's a big challenge to amend the Constitution. It's only happened 27 times in our whole nation's history. And the reason is because you got to have 2/3 of both chambers of Congress and 3/4 of the states to ratify. It's usually at least a many years long process and very complicated. We'll see. I'm sure there's going to be lots of discussion about that. I will say I'm very disappointed in that outcome. I think it subjects the country to serious challenges going forward, and we'll have to deal with it as a Congress.
Now, House Republicans, they simply cannot pass a rule for a defense bill because they're fighting over Trump's voting restrictions. That's not exactly the image of a party ready to govern. It's the image of a party preparing to explain why it had all the power and still couldn't.
That got captured. I don't want to vote for nobody that got captured. I want to vote for that got away.
Trump, who rarely, if ever, apologizes for anything, sounded like he's softening a little on McCain.
And certainly if there was a misunderstanding, I would totally take that back. But hopefully I said it correctly.
On the Kelly file, McCain's daughter Meghan couldn't be angrier.
My father has been in public office since before I was born, and this is one of the grossest, most disgusting comments I've ever heard, which is really saying something. I'm 30 years old. And it's because it's not just an attack on my father, it's an attack on all veterans, and it's an attack on all POWs.
The moment Alec Baldwin's impression became the most watched sketch comedy in America, and the laughter turned from with him to at him. The love turned to venom overnight. That is the full arc, and it is the most Trump arc imaginable. He begged to be inside the club, was let in briefly, bombed, got mocked, and has spent every year since trying to burn the club down with federal power. The FCC order against ABC this week is not a new impulse. It is the 2015 humiliation, weaponized. Let me give you the full nerd breakdown of the Trump versus comedy psychology, because I have studied this man's relationship with humor for years, and it is one of the most revealing windows into who he is. Start with the foundational fact. Donald Trump does not laugh. Watch the footage. Go back through 40 years of interviews, rallies, dinners, and debates. Genuine, spontaneous laughter. The kind where a person surrenders control for a moment is almost entirely absent from the public record of Donald Trump's life. People who have spent time with him have remarked on it for decades. He smirks. He performs amusement. But the actual surrender of laughter, the moment of being carried away, it is not in him. Comedy requires a person to briefly lose control, and Donald Trump would rather do almost anything than lose control. Now add the formative wound, and every Trump obsessive knows exactly which night I am talking about. The 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner. Barack Obama, at the peak of his comedic powers, dismantled Trump in front of the entire Washington establishment while Trump sat frozen at his table, jaw clenched, unable to leave, unable to respond, marinating in humiliation as the room roared. Seth Meyers followed and made it worse. Multiple people who know Trump have traced his decision to seriously run for president to that night.
As MAGA crashes and burns, MAGA podcasters are publicly turning against Donald Trump and his despicable regime. You also have MAGA podcasters attacking each other. Let me bring you the receipts. A reminder, make sure you subscribe to the Midas Touch YouTube channel. We're on our way to 6 million subscribers. You may think you're subscribed, but you may not be actually subscribed. Double check, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now, MAGA podcaster Andy Frisella, one of the biggest MAGA podcasters out there, a guy who was MAGA through and through. Here's what he just said about Donald Trump and Trump's regime. Play this clip.
I'm going to say this right now, and I mean this. Okay, Donald Trump, you've lost touch with your fucking base. You've lost touch with reality of what people actually want to see. And the people around you are either not telling you the truth or you're fucking in on it. And if you're not in on it, I would appreciate for you and I to have a discussion so I could inform you about what these people really want. Okay, so this can go on Twitter and you can have your people call me and I will get my fucking happy ass on an airplane and I'll sit down and enjoy a motherfucking Big Mac with you and we will fucking get real clear about what people actually want, because the motherfuckers around you are either full of shit or you're in on it.
Yeah.
And that's where people believe right now. Okay, and here's the thing.
A lot of people believe that.
Yes, and here's the thing. Okay, I said on last show, you're going to go down as the president who had the opportunity to fix this country and chose not to. And you might say, oh, well, that doesn't really fucking matter. Well, you know what? It's going to matter, because your kids are going to get blackballed in America. Okay, your legacy is going to be ruined. The Trump name will be a fucking joke. And I know you care about those things.
Yeah.
And you should.
Former MAGA podcaster Candace Owens just went on Piers Morgan, and here's what she had to say about Donald Trump. Let's play this clip.
Are you done with Donald Trump, or could you see a way that you would end up perhaps voting for him? Oh, you can't run again, obviously, but would you support him publicly again?
So I want to be clear. I don't regret voting for Donald Trump above Kamala. I think he was the better candidate, certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that he's been a chronic disappointment. And I feel embarrassed that I told people to go vote for him because this wasn't going to happen, and it is happening. But I just think that the picture of politics in America is going to look very differently because of his actions. So I don't know where we go from here. I really don't. But this is not the candidate that I voted for.
Before we land the plane, let me put on the comedy nerd hat alongside the politics nerd hat, because there is a craft reason Chris Rock's Trump material cuts deeper than anyone else's, and it deserves to be understood. Most anti-Trump comedy makes one of two mistakes. The first mistake is preaching, telling the audience Trump is bad, which the audience either already believes or resents being told, and which produces applause instead of laughter. Applause break comedy is dead comedy, and Trump actually feeds on it because it lets him frame every comedian as just another partisan enemy. The second mistake is going only for the surface, the hair, the tan, the hands, which stings for a moment but changes nothing, because Trump has spent his life converting mockery of his appearance into evidence of his persecution. Chris Rock does neither. Rock's method, perfected over 40 years, is to implicate everyone. Watch the December 2024 monologue again with this lens. The 7 rapists in my wallet bit does not let a single person in that audience off the hook. It indicts the currency in their pockets, the history they were raised on, the founders they were taught to revere, and then places Trump inside that lineage as its most honest expression. The audience is not laughing safely at a villain on a screen. They are laughing, uncomfortably, at their own country and themselves. That is why the joke cannot be dismissed as partisan sniping, why it traveled across every demographic, and why it wounds Trump in a way 1,000 orange jokes never could. It denies him the one defense he has always relied on, the claim that his critics think America is great and he alone is the aberration. Rock's comedy says the opposite. America produced you. America recognizes you. America has always had a version of you, and there is no comeback to that. You cannot call it fake news. It is a history lesson with a laugh track.
Apparently AI, by the way, the only thing I'm sure of about AI, I'm not an expert, is that AI, as soon as we have robots running around this country, they'll all be pedophiles too. There's no one in power that will apparently just not be a pedophile. All these robots will be pedophile. 100% will deal with pedophile robots. Our first robot president will be a pedophile. I know that. It's the only thing I know. Our first AI robot president will absolutely be a pedophile.
You've got MAGA influencer and MAGA podcaster Christian Cooper, who voted for Donald Trump, explains why she is on a MAGA influencer unfollowing spree. And she's basically saying, if you're still MAGA right now, and she said, I'm someone who voted for Trump, she goes, if you're still on this MAGA bandwagon, there's something wrong with you. Watch what she has to say. Play this clip.
I just went on a MAGA influencer unfollow spree, and let me tell you why. The mental gymnastics required to stand by your man under these conditions truly, in my opinion, is Olympic level. And I have followed some of these people for years, admired their ability to speak out when the opinion was unpopular. But now I'm starting to think, okay, they were countering the system, but not countering the system, which is the reason why many of us voted for this administration in the first place. Here's some of my problems with this administration. The Epstein list, okay? Referring to the Epstein list as the Epstein hoax after running your entire campaign on that is a slap in the face to all of us. Do you think we are stupid? You cannot gaslight me enough into forgetting that this admin said they were going to release the Epstein list. Pam Bondi said it was on her desk, okay? We are still sending billions of dollars overseas to fund foreign wars, denying America's interest, right? We've got some problems here in the mainland. Approving PFA pesticides to be sprayed all over our fruit and vegetables. It's not limited to your fruit and vegetables. This is going into our soil. It's going to leak into our water supply. We are going to be drinking it. Forever chemicals are linked to hormone disruption, thyroid dysfunction, cancer. It's an atrocity. When we're talking about making America healthy again, PFA pesticides is crazy. Debt normalization, 50-year mortgages, essentially saying your kids will never own anything ever. They will never own that little plot of land, the American dream. They're never gonna own their own home. The fact that 90% of Black Friday purchases were made using a buy now, pay later like Klarna, that's also crazy. Surveillance expansion through Palantir. Think China during COVID. Yeah, that sounds extreme, doesn't it? That is how rapidly this administration is advancing AI. They're advancing it so quickly. They had to put out a statement to state governments saying, if you try to put regulations around AI, we're coming for you too. That is how much this federal government wants to advance AI and data centralization. So freaking scary. And then you can't ask anything about any of this. If you start asking questions, you were never really MAGA. You're not based, right? All this infighting is caused by Candace and Tucker. Y'all, please be so serious. Don't insult our intelligence like that, right? We might like Candace and Tucker, but they're not changing our opinions. They're just saying what a lot of us are thinking.
This is also, not coincidentally, why rock has survived every era of comedy intact for 4 decades, while lesser comics rose and fell. The man does not do targets of convenience. He does the truth, at whoever's expense, including his own. And a president whose entire empire is built on a 40-year war against the truth simply has no weapon that works against someone like that. And that brings us to the deepest layer of this story, the one that transforms it from entertainment news into something every American needs to sit with. Authoritarian regimes have always understood something that democracies forget at their peril. The comedian is the canary in the coal mine. Dictatorships do not fear their opposition parties half as much as they fear their satirists, because the opposition can be smeared as power-hungry rivals, but laughter cannot be smeared. Laughter is involuntary. When a room full of people laughs at the strongman, they are performing, together, in public, the one act he cannot permit. They are demonstrating that they are not afraid. That is why the first arrests in collapsing democracies so often include the cartoonists and the comics. That is why the golden statues go up. The 22-foot gilded monument at Doral that we covered last week is the physical opposite of a joke. It is a demand to be taken seriously forever in bronze. And that is why the FCC is threatening broadcast licenses over a one-liner about the First Lady. The regime that cannot take a joke is the regime that knows, somewhere deep down, that it is one. Chris Rock understood all of this before almost anyone. Go back and watch that December 2024 monologue with fresh eyes. Underneath every laugh line is a warning delivered with surgical precision. This man is not an aberration. This country built him. He is not playing. And the deportations and the power grabs are coming exactly as promised. Rock said it all. The Musk alliance, the mass deportation machinery, the shamelessness. weeks before the second inauguration, wrapped in jokes so funny that the audience swallowed the medicine without noticing.
Now, amongst that like MAGA alpha bro community, you have these people named like Clav and others, and they're just saying, we'll vote Gavin Newsom over JD Vance. And they have like their own bizarre language. They're like, Gavin Moggs JD Vance, and like Gavin is a Chad. Is a Giga Chad, and JD Vance is like a beta. I don't know what these people are even saying, but here's a very popular streamer in this MAGA alpha circle named Clav, and here's what he has to say about why he's voting for Gavin Newsom over JD Vance. Here, play this clip.
Yeah, but I mean, like this next election cycle, who's going to win? It's going to be Gavin Newsom against JD Vance, because JD Vance is subhuman and Gavin Newsom Moggs.
JD Vance is subhuman?
Yeah.
What makes you say that?
He's got a very short total facial width to height ratio. He's obese, very recessed side profile, whereas Newsom is like 6'3" Chad.
So JD's very tall. JD's got to be
well, still,
6'2",
I mean,
6'3".
Gavin Newsom obviously Moggs him to death.
Then you have all of these MAGA influencers turning against Ben Shapiro. Like here you have Andrew Schultz. Here's what he had to say about Shapiro. Play this clip.
Wait a minute. It's crazy. So wait, is the Daily Wire an American media platform or is it an Israeli media platform? I'm just asking.
This guy's cooking.
I'm just asking. If the rule is, I'm just saying, if the rule is you cannot be critical, because he has no problem being very critical of America.
Yep.
But you can't criticize Israel as a country. That's just another country, unless you're saying, and you're clearly admitting, that the Daily Wire is an arm of the Israeli propaganda machine. Is that? Oof. Are you manipulating the religious right in America? Are you manipulating the right-wing conservatives in America and selling them country western movies and putting on your little cowboy hat and fake moving in Nashville so that you could take all their money and then in the process restricting free speech, one of the core tenets of the American identity? Ben.
Oof. Benjamin.
What is happening?
Here's what Steve Bannon had to say about Ben Shapiro. Play this clip.
Shapiro is like a cancer, and that cancer spreads. It's a cancer and it metastasizes. He tried to take over Breitbart and I ran him out of there. He tried to take over David Horowitz's, who was his mentor. Don't ask me. Ask the guys associated with David Horowitz what he did there. He tried to take that over. And mark my word, he will make a move on Turning Point because he's always been envious of Charlie Kirk.
Here is what this is what, let's take a listen to over. There's Alex Jones. Here's what he has to say about Ben Shapiro. Play this clip.
In fact, it needs to be put to Ben Shapiro, who is definitely in the pocket of Netanyahu. I think he is an intelligence asset. My opinion, how he operates, Levin. I believe they are officially Israeli spies, okay? And I don't hate Israel in and of itself existing. I do hate people that act like they're Americans and act like they're loyal when everything they do flies in the face of that. And I believe from action and behavior that Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro are actual intelligence operatives, card carrying with Israeli intelligence agencies. I know the cut of their...
Now, here's what Ben Shapiro says about them. Here, play this. He calls them extremists. Here, play this clip.
He knew that Nick Fuentes is an evil troll and that building him up is an act of moral imbecility. And that is precisely what Tucker Carlson did. He built Nick Fuentes up. And he ought to take responsibility for that, just as he ought to take responsibility for glazing pornographer and alleged sex trafficker Andrew Tate, or for mainstreaming fake historian and pseudo-Nazi apologist Daryl Cooper as America's best and most honest popular historian. Hosts are indeed responsible for the guests they choose and the questions they ask those guests.
And then every single thing he described came true. That is what the greatest comedians actually are. They are the truth tellers who smuggle the truth past our defenses. Which is exactly why Donald Trump, a man constructed entirely out of defenses, goes nuts every time one of them takes the stage. So here is where we leave it tonight. Chris Rock has spent nearly a decade destroying Donald Trump on live television. From "My heart goes out to COVID" while the man lay in a hospital bed, to "Trump's gonna get it down to 3" as 60 million people laughed, to the Tupac prophecy that called the entire 2024 election 2 years early. He has never been sued into silence, never been shouted down, never needed to apologize, and never once flinched. And Donald Trump, with all his armies, all his prosecutors, all his golden statues, and all his regulatory weapons, has never landed a single punch in return. Because you cannot indict a punchline. You cannot revoke laughter's license. And every night, somewhere in America, on some stage the FCC cannot touch, another comedian steps up to a microphone and proves it all over again. This is USA Press. If tonight's report gave you something real, hit that like button right now. 1 second of your time puts this video in front of thousands more people who need it. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because we are here every single day with the depth nobody else gives you. And drop a comment below. What is the single greatest Trump takedown a comedian has ever delivered? Chris Rock's rapist wallet joke? Obama in 2011? Kimmel this month? Let's build the definitive list together, right there in the comments. Stay sharp, stay laughing, because the laughter, my friends, is the one thing they can never take.